But what I want you to understand is in the knowledge brand business and in the world we live in, many of us have to change. The subject matter is evolving so fast, so we have to talk about it. But even if that's not the case, we're going to have to innovate the way we deliver it. And so that is a fact of life. And that means, I'm not saying that like you're going to have to re-record a course every year necessarily, but probably every 2. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 230 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's episode because today I'm going to give you a reality check, if you will. We're going to be talking about the struggles of selling information. And this is something I talk about all the time, but we're in the midst of kind of this non-series series, if you will, where I'm kind of walking through how do you go about building a business based on your knowledge and or expertise. So how do you build what I call a knowledge business or a knowledge brand? And in this episode, we're going to take on some struggles. And I think it's important for people to understand this because one of the big disservices that I see happening in the online space is that there are so many people out there who make it seem like it's going to be simple, that all you got to do is go out there and throw some stuff out there and people are going to buy it. And, I'm recording this shortly after my buddy Mel Abraham interviewed me for his podcast. And one of the things that we talked about on that was how, both of us had these views, like when we left our professional life, that we were going to kind of, as professionals, that we were going to create courses. And of course, we were going to make tons of money and we were going to have freedom. And it was going to be simple, and how none of it worked out that way for either one of us. And so, with that in mind, I really wanted to kind of tackle this and talk about some of the struggles. Now, this is not about being a downer. That's not the purpose here. The purpose for me in this episode is to help you understand some specific things you need to be thinking about and some challenges. And this is separate from just general challenges of selling, marketing, et cetera. So this is not an episode that's about, it's going to be hard. We're going to talk specifically, what are some of the things that are going to be challenges in front of you if you're selling knowledge, expertise, information, products, those kinds of things. So that's what we're talking about, and that's what we'll be diving into. Now, before we dive into the substance, if you haven't yet, I would love for you to join my free training program, Badass Online Marketing University, which is basically our answer to the problem of death by 1,000 courses. One of the things that my team and I noticed is that to learn a lot of the things that you need to learn to be an entrepreneur, people were out there buying this $1,000 course and that $2,000 course and doing all those things. And part of the problem is they were doing that, learning particular tactics and strategies before they even knew or could know if that strategy or tactic was right for them. And we didn't like that. We thought that was wrong. And so we decided to create Badass Online Marketing University. So it's got foundational information, including how to think about, building your business, how to think about the legal stuff, how to think about the financial stuff, how to think about the marketing stuff, but then also specific strategies and tactics. There's a course in there about messaging, a course in there about list building, a course in there about email marketing. And these are all real courses, in-depth, walking through the process. So that's what we've got. As I'm recording this, the course I'm working on is about content marketing. By the time this episode goes live, there's a very real chance that course may also be there too. And we also have a course from that we're getting ready to publish as I'm recording this. By the time it goes live, it'll definitely be in there about branding. So there's a member of my community who, Patrick Sesko, he is fantastic at branding. He helped us with our rebrand. I guess it's been over a year ago now. And so he volunteered to create this course, and we said, yes, we're putting that in there because people need it. So that's what BombU is. You can join for free at bobbyklink.com/BombU. That's BOMU, bobbyklink.com/BombU. Now, with that, let's talk about some of the challenges that you will face specifically as kind of a knowledge brand or someone who sells information or expertise. One of the big challenges is that there is constant innovation and things are changing constantly. And I was thinking about this because I'll never forget one of the things that I've said for a long time, when I talk about marketing is I said, hey, if Apple wouldn't do that, why should we? And it doesn't mean that we never do. Like sometimes it makes sense for us to be different than Apple because they sell products, we sell information, right? So it could make sense. But my point is that as a general matter, if I can't find an example of someone outside the online space, is what I mean to do it. When I say that, what I mean is if I couldn't find someone outside the online space using this marketing tactic, why would I? But when I posted this thing about Apple one time, I saw a friend who is someone who creates courses basically, or was creating a course, working to create a course in the online space, say something along the lines of, yeah, but Apple has to constantly come up with new products, and I don't want to have to do that. They got to put out a new product every year, and I don't want to have to do that. And one of the things that hit me was that, I wanted to say to that person, look, you're going to have to. We don't live in a world where you can kind of do create a course and forget it kind of thing. You're having to constantly innovate, constantly change. And there are a lot of examples of this that are very obvious. I feel sorry for my friends who sell products around Facebook marketing or Facebook advertising, because it's changing so fast that the notion, like if you create something today, within 6 months, it's changed and you have to update and you have to change. And now, are there concepts that are the same and that don't change? Of course. But the execution changes and figuring things out changes. And again, I listen to these people who talk about, as I'm recording this, like a year ago would have said, don't do certain things. And now says, hey, now you've got to do that Facebook has gotten better and all those things. So there are so many changes. And that's like one little thing, one little area. But even if your area doesn't change, like even if like what you're teaching doesn't change, like I think, for example, as someone in my community who teaches needlepoint is probably not something that's going to change significantly, but the technology that we're using to teach it is changing. The ways that we have available to us to teach to people are changing. All of those things are changing, and they're changing so fast that the notion of believing that I can simply put a product out there and then have a very long life cycle for that product where it will last decades, it's just not going to happen. Now, I don't know, we could probably look at certain products like toothpaste. I'm going to be honest, I don't know a lot about toothpaste, but I'm guessing that a lot of these toothpaste formulas haven't changed all that much. Like Pronamel probably isn't changing very often. So their product, they don't need new products on a regular basis. They just don't have to do that. But what I want you to understand is in the knowledge brand business and in the world we live in, many of us have to change. The subject matter is evolving so fast, so we have to talk about it. But even if that's not the case, we're going to have to innovate the way we deliver it. And so that is a fact of life. And that means, I'm not saying that like you're going to have to re-record a course every year necessarily, but probably every 2. as I'm recording this, my email marketing course that's part of BombU, originally was a paid course, but we recorded that. We finished recording that a little more than a year ago. We did it in the summer of 2020. But I'm already thinking about how I need to change it. And part of that has to do with, just wanting to update it. And part of it has to do with there have been updates to the iOS, which is going to change things about what we have to think about. But I've evolved my thinking about these things. So again, I'm simply saying you're going to have to re-record, add, innovate constantly in this space. And that's a challenge. I just want you to understand that. And you're going to have to do this while you're also marketing and selling your products. And that's kind of one of the realities I want people to get, is that you're going to have this marketing piece going on over here and selling and kind of, getting people into your world, nurturing them and selling them, while simultaneously on this other side, working to improve your products, to iterate your products, to make them better. That's the reality of what you're signing up for when you get into this space. And again, if you're a service provider, maybe you're thinking, oh, that doesn't apply to me. Well, it does, in the sense that you have to be thinking about, okay, and again, I'll just use a very simple thing. I mean, if you were a Kajabi specialist who built pages on Kajabi, well, Kajabi has changed. So all of a sudden, now when someone is looking for someone to help them with Kajabi, they're probably looking for help, not just with the course, but with the website, maybe with the email, and with a bunch of different pieces. So all of a sudden, you're having to change your offers, to increase your skill set, to do all of those things and innovate your offers. I have someone I listen to quite frequently who is a Facebook ads person, and I guess that's how she started. But now she would say she has a marketing company, because what she recognized is that 4 years ago, she could sell Facebook ads, and manage your Facebook ads was something people wanted. Now people want help with a much broader perspective. They want help with their marketing, with their funnel. And so she's had to change the offer that she has and innovate the product that she's offering to the market. So that's kind of one of the big things. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is, and this is a place where in some ways the type of business that you choose matters. And that is the issue of, are there change costs? In other words, for one of your customers to stop buying from you and buy from someone else, is there a cost involved? And in traditional businesses, and not all of them, but in many traditional product businesses, there are change costs. If you think about it, I'm sitting here, I'm looking over, I have a brother, is it brother or brothers? But a brother printer, right? And so I buy the printer refills from them, the printer cartridges, when that runs out. And so for me now, all of a sudden, there is this, what's called an incumbent advantage for brother, because I have that there already. And so because of that, for me to change from brother to something else would be a problem. Especially if I'm buying cartridges and I have a bunch of extra of these, and these are the laser cartridges. And if I had a bunch of those and then this printer all of a sudden quit working, guess what? I would try to find another printer by brother that would use those same cartridges, because I wouldn't want them to go to waste. And so that kind of creates this inertia where you don't want to change to a different product. And software is another example. And this is a case where, if you think about your marketing software, for us, my team, the beginning of this year, we went through a major tech overhaul where we moved stuff from Kartra over to our own membership site, ConvertKit, etc. That was a major undertaking. I mean, that was months of our time. So if you can think about it, now in some sense, we're on ConvertKit and Access Ally, and they have it. So it's not captive. Yes, we can move, but there are costs involved in doing that. With the products and services that you and I offer, oftentimes that's not the case. Now, if we're selling information products, especially, if you're selling information products, there is no incumbent advantage at all. And so you need to recognize that fact. But here's where the type, or kind of the model you pick for a knowledge brand, does matter. If you're a coach, if you have a group coaching program, all of a sudden you do start to have some of that incumbent advantage. And here's what I mean. The people, well, I could use Facebook ads, for example. Someone who's been running your Facebook ads for a year has some built up knowledge of what works and what doesn't work with your audience, with your ads, with your business. And if you go to someone else, yes, they can look at the history, but it's not quite the same as having run the ads, tried the things, etc. That's the example of a service provider. But with a coach, it's even more. People who are part of my coaching program for a year, for example, by the end of the year, I have a good feeling for their business, for what they want, for what they don't want. Meaning, like, I have some people in my coaching program who I know don't really want to spend a bunch of time on social media, and I'm fine. But the point of that is that way when they're talking to me and asking for coaching, I already know that I'm probably not going to coach them to create a strategy that is social media heavy. We're going to say, okay, how can we come up with a plan that works? And I'm not going to tell them to not do social. FYI, I will tell people to do stuff even if they don't want to, but I have that kind of knowledge. I know their products. I know their offers. I know what they've tried. And so I have that built up knowledge, which creates a bit of a change cost. Now, if people don't like the results they've gotten with me, people don't like me, they're not going to stick around. But if they continue to need coaching, if they've liked the service they've gotten, they would have to say, well, if I decided to not go with Bobby and try to get some other coach now, it's going to be months before that other coach really knows my business. And so all of a sudden there are these kind of change costs in that kind of business. But even that, I want to be clear, it's not the same. It's not the same as, what we face where you kind of have this incumbent advantage with products. And again, another example of an incumbent advantage, Apple versus PC. Once you get used to using one of them, changing is hard. Or iPhone versus, a different kind of smartphone. Like, I know how to use an iPhone. When my wife used to have an Android, I would look at it, I'm like, I don't even know how to use this thing. And so I was never going to buy an Android. So Apple had captured me. And the reality was I was going to keep buying, or I'm going to keep buying an Apple phone unless and until they give me a really strong reason to not want to. And that's something that we don't have. We don't have that advantage. So we need to recognize that, which means, again, this is part of the constant innovation too, right? That if we're not constantly innovating, constantly doing those things, and someone else is out there, there's another person offering a competing product, our people can change without huge costs. So that's one of those challenges. Now, another challenge, and we touched on this last week in the context of talking about the value of information and how information becomes less valuable the more widely available it is. That creates a very specific problem if what you sell is information. If your view is I sell information, not implementation, but information, how do you generate interest in your product without cannibalizing the product, without offering that information so people aren't valuable? One of the classic quandaries you hear from people in the online marketing space is like, how do I figure out what to give away in my free information versus what to hold back for the paid product? I mean, if you've been in an online marketing group, you have heard that question multiple times because it comes up over and over and over again. And so that stems from the fact that information loses its value when it's available. And if you think about it, for a product business, that's not the case. I mean, they can have their content marketing strategy can cover all the content. I mean, because they're not selling information. But it's not just your free content, it's the webinar trap. You hear people talk about webinars and, a lot of people worry that if they give too much information and too much value in the webinar, then people won't buy their course. But it creates this paradox because if you don't provide any value, people don't buy either. So figuring out that line can be incredibly complicated and can be incredibly hard for people who say, I'm selling information, who are basically selling, like if they're selling a self-study course or just a course with some Q&A, where really the pitch is the information. Now, to solve this problem, ultimately, what I suggest to people is you have to get out of the mindset of saying that you sell information and instead think that you sell something more. You sell an implementation program. It's got some coaching. It's got some more in-depth, like you putting your eyes on things. When you make that shift, this problem goes away. And I've had this discussion with multiple people who are in my coaching program when they've kind of made the shift and said, look, I'm not going to think I'm selling a course anymore. I'm going to sell access to me and the ability to have me and my team or whatever it is looking at their stuff and giving them real coaching and not just information and kind of like surface level Q&A. All of a sudden, it gets much easier to figure out what content to create. For example, I can put Bomb You out there for free because I don't sell information. I can give you all the information. I can do an entire podcast series teaching you everything about marketing because I don't sell information about marketing. I sell a coaching program where you work directly with me and my team and get coaching and get help, etc. And so because of that, it simplifies the things. And again, I stumbled into this because the legal stuff, I was never selling information. I was selling templates, which are implementation. So I could teach people everything about the legal stuff without having to worry about cannibalizing my product. But this is where you have to think about structuring what it is that you offer and how do you think about what you offer. But if you believe you're selling information, you're constantly going to have this problem. And again, this is not a matter of psyching yourself out and saying some affirmations of, oh, I don't sell information, I sell implementation. It's about actually doing it. It's about structuring an offer so that what you do offer isn't information-based, it's something more. When you make that shift in your offer, things get way easier. Now, it means your offer involves more work, but it makes the front end way simpler. And so that's kind of a challenge that you have to figure out, and you have to think about that. And either you're going to have to spend a lot of your time trying to thread this needle, or you have to restructure your offer. And it's a choice that everyone has to make, right? You got to figure out what it is. And we'll talk more about the different types of knowledge businesses in next week's episode and kind of the implications of it. But you have to be thinking about these things. And then the next real challenge I wanted to talk to is I'll call it the scale problem, which is, and this relates back to in last week, I talked about there are low or no barriers to entry, which means people can come in and create and offer competing products very quickly because there's not a lot of costs involved. There's not a lot of time involved. The tech is getting simpler and simpler. And so the real defense to this is if you can become known as the person for a particular problem, competitors become less of an issue. Now, people will come in and you can't charge ridiculously high prices, but you can charge a premium and you can kind of get that positioning. So you're just known as the person who solves that. But how do you get to scale before the competitors come in? And that really becomes one of the big challenges and struggles because of the low barriers to entry. Again, with traditional product businesses, because of the cost involved, because of the difficulty in finding and sourcing and all of that stuff, it's not so simple for competitors to come in. And because of that, that you really do have to, figure out how, in the product world, you don't have to do it. In our world, you have to figure out how am I going to get up to scale quick enough so that I can establish myself. And that needs to be part of your planning process is just how do I do that? And when we talked about this a couple episodes, and we'll talk about expertise in the future, like part of this is figuring out what is your business expertise? What is your marketing expertise? What is that going to be? But also having some expertise. If you do that, that can help. But ultimately, you've got to become someone who gets yourself out there and gets to enough people buying from you before the competition comes in. Because once the competition comes in, it gets harder and harder. And then you're trying to catch up while doing the other things. And so you have to solve that problem early. So that's kind of the last thing I wanted to chat about. Again, there's a lot of problems we face, but I just want to be clear. There are problems that are specific to selling information that really have to do with the economics of information and the differences between the type of business. And that's what I was chatting about today. And that's what I want you thinking about as you're entering this space, that those differences are the things that could mean you should market differently, or that when creating your marketing plan, you need to account for those things. And so that's why we're covering it, because it's something you can solve these problems, but you have to be intentional about it, and you have to be intentional about it at the right time. So that was this week's episode. Now, next week, we're going to talk about the 3 types of knowledge businesses. And this is like, I think this applies to the online world, but it's something that you can look at and see offline as well. And so we'll be talking about that. And I think it's going to be important for you to figure out which of these 3 business types you are and want to be, because it has it will have very important implications for how you plan to grow and build your business. And so we're going to talk about that. Come back. It's going to be a great episode. I'll see you then. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.